Dr. Deepali Sinha Khetriwal, who's the Director for Sustainability Services at DSS Plus, that is DuPont Sustainable Solutions. Ms. Deepali has more than 17 years of experience in the sustainability space, having lived and worked in India and Europe with project engagements spanning more than 15 countries, including Africa, Asia, Middle East, CIS countries, and Latin America. She has been involved in raising sustainability impact-linked finance, has a strong understanding of offsets and credits, including the upcoming plastic credits. She has been a mentor on the Circular Innovation Jam, developing solutions in advanced local circular economies for plastics and effective waste management systems across South Asia in order to reduce ocean plastic pollution. And so over to you, Ms. Deepali.
Shivani, thank you for that introduction, and very good afternoon to all the participants joining in. Thank you also for this invitation to present on the circularity opportunities in the chemical sector. I'm Deepali, as introduced by Shivani, and I head the sustainability services vertical at DSS Plus. If I can just quickly share my screen. Yes, that works. So just Shivani, let me know if the screen is up for you.
Yes, the screen is visible. You can see the presentation. Yes.
I put it in full screen mode as well, so it's better. So yeah, I'll just start with a little introduction to DSS Plus. As we like to say, we are a 50-year-old startup because we have a very strong legacy coming from DuPont. Formerly, we were a part of DuPont, and then we've been independent for a couple of years now. So we are still a bit like a startup, but of course with a very strong legacy. And I see my screen is frozen. I don't know if it's true for everyone else as well, or is it just me? Hello?
For us, it is moving. I think it has.
Okay, I think there's a little bit of a lag, but
yes.
yeah. So we really have a very strong purpose, and the purpose is really to protect lives and to create a sustainable future. And underpinning this is these three words: protect, transform, and sustain. Protect what we care for, what you care for, what all of us care for: our environment, our communities, our families. Protect and transform these organizations where we can create a positive impact. We've been hearing really impactful organizations, how change is really being driven to create that impact at various levels, and that's really transformative and sustainable in the end, because if it doesn't sustain, it's not going to be valuable. So how do you make sure that you can sustain these transformation changes by integrating it into the culture, into the organizational capabilities, and how do you use the tools to make sure that it is something that becomes part of the business? So as a consultancy, we have been very much engaged with different companies in the chemical space, given our heritage from DuPont. And of course, coming out of DuPont, as I mentioned a couple of years ago, we've also been able to join up with a few other companies, Lodestone, KKS Advisors, and Sophius. I was originally part of the Sophius team, where we've been working a lot on the aspects of circular economy, environmental sustainability, take-back systems, looking at various aspects of policy, operational pilot projects, as well as, really the whole strategy and implementation of this circular economy into a business. So that's why, we've transformed from just focusing on safety to including all these aspects of ES&G, which, a lot of the earlier speakers, Mr. Menon explained it very well, talked about how it's going beyond just safety, only the environmental aspect, but really looking at it from a very holistic organizational perspective. And so that's why we've become DSS Plus, and from this year. And what we really bring together as DSS Plus are three core strengths. One is on operational risk management, the other is on operational excellence, and the third is on ESG. And the reason why we think this is really valuable is because they all have a very close interplay regarding risk, regarding efficiency, and the conversation around ESG now, which is how do you transition, how do you mitigate risks, whether it is coming from climate, whether it is coming from supply chains, and how do you implement these into a business that can be operationally efficient and sustainable. And of course, we work with a lot of clients around the world on various aspects of risk management from a safety aspect, but also really building that capability and culture so that it's really integrated into the business. And so we want to keep that perspective and look at it not just as a separate silo. Okay, that is a sustainability function, or that is a risk function, or that is an operational function. But overall, it all combines together in an integrated way. So coming to our topic, and already I think the base of this topic has been built over the morning, and we've had a lot of excellent examples, excellent speakers talking about ESG, about sustainability, about the UN SDGs, the also example from SABIC on how really the circular economy is being implemented in organizations. And I just thought I'll just take a higher level view on what are really the opportunities in the chemical industry in the circularity space. And of course, the circular economy is one part of ESG, but it is a very, very fundamental and very critical component of that. And this is really driven by several factors. A lot of speakers already touched upon these, so I won't go into them in detail. But resource scarcity is really one of the biggest drivers towards circularity, towards the circular economy. As the supply of really key materials is limited or is in places that are very unstable for many risks, whether it's geopolitical risks, whether it's climate risks, etc. There is a huge focus on securing supplies, and these very critical resources are best actually found in many of our existing devices, existing products, sort of in the anthropological layer that we have already in urban mines. So the resource scarcity is a very big driver of the circular economy. Regulation is also very much part of that discussion. There is already, as in Europe, there is very much a focus on providing the legislative basis for the circular economy, pushing legislation for repair, for reuse, for take back. But it's not only Europe. Other countries are moving as well. Just recently, 2-3 days ago, the South African government published a notice which is going to be very relevant for chemical companies, especially pesticides and other lubricant manufacturers, for example, to implement a take-back system, which is, to say that whatever products that you put on the market, you need to have a mechanism to take back the waste from it, take back at the end of consumer use. How do you make sure that they are disposed of correctly, do not pollute the environment, do not have any kind of adverse effects at the end of life? And that's coming to the point on pollution and waste, which is also becoming a really important topic, and which is very, very directly linked to the circular economy. Of course, there are all sorts of other, drivers, the organizational purpose, the market conditions, and of course climate change, decarbonization, which was mentioned before. But within the circular economy framework, definitely all these are very relevant for organizations. And we did a lot of research around what's really happening on the ground with companies. What are some of the targets? This was already mentioned. Some companies have targets up to 2030, some up to 2040, some even beyond, on various aspects. There's carbon targets, there is net zero waste targets, and within the ESG space, of course, you have a whole range of targets on governance, on how do you link skills and the future of work as such, on digital technologies and how can they be used to enable a more circular and better processes. But really, a lot of the targets are around the whole energy transition and sustainability. And these are all directly linked to circularity. Whether we're talking about recyclability or, phasing out of single-use plastics, whether it is extending the life of products by, making it easier to repair, whether it's having more efficient processes so that you use lesser energy, lesser water. How do you use the resources back into the process? And of course, the entire waste discussion, as I mentioned, is a very big part of commitments that companies, we have seen in the chemical sector have been talking about and are making. So just to, touch upon, oops, sorry, I don't know, my slides seem to be hung again. Sorry, yeah. So I don't want to go too much into detail. I think this was already discussed, or mentioned. What is really a circular economy? It's something that is keeping the value of the materials, keeping the materials in the supply chain, in the use in products, in applications, as long as possible, and really reducing whatever flows out of the system or into sinks, whether it's landfill, whether it's emissions, etc. And this is something that we think is really at the center of risk. How do you look at enterprise risk? How do you look at enterprise operations and broader sustainability? It really sits at the intersection of all these three aspects, because when you implement something that is around a circular economy topic, whether it's introducing a new product or a new service or even new business models, they all have, aspects touching upon these functions within a company. And we work, for example, with some of the largest companies to understand how do producer responsibility legislations impact, them. And if there is a risk, and there is the sustainability angle to that, of course, but it's really about creating those take-back systems, about bringing back from, end-of-life products into the circular economy. We've also worked with companies on setting up those skills and capabilities on understanding how can you design products, how can you design or identify services around the circular economy, taking those, inspirations and looking at the organization for those innovations and ideas. And this has been very successful in a couple of cases where they've gone on to launch really new services and, spin-off businesses in the circular economy space. And of course, the whole operational excellence and, driving efficiencies at the operational level is very much part of sustainability and the circular economy, even if the terms may be different. So, you might have a cost efficiency in an operational sense, but it's also a resource efficiency in the environmental sense. So that's where we see, circular economy really playing a very, very central role in improving efficiencies, in reducing risks, and really creating that sustainability in the business. And so just, to give a few examples, because it's easy to talk the theory, but, really to bring it down to practicality, how can, really there be case studies and examples to inspire businesses in the chemical industry, in the chemical sector. There is a whole lot of new work being done on replacing toxic substances, single-use, products, especially in the plastic sector, with longer life, and also, changing from non-renewable inputs to renewable bio-based inputs. We heard about the renewable feedstock in the previous presentation. So how do you integrate all this into the supply chain to respond to the consumer demand? There's also a lot of interest and financing being focused on the circular economy, and just a couple of names I've put over there, but there are definitely a lot more. But there were green bonds being issued to Henkel and Indorama, who received financing at better rates than in the market for circular economy linked targets. So if you reduce waste, if you have plastic takebacks, etc., you can access financing, at preferential conditions, and this is being driven by the investors' interest in the circular economy. And private equity firms are also something that we've seen being quite interested in it. We've had a couple of engagements to really assess what are the ESG risks and how could you mitigate these through circular economy strategies, from an asset sustainability perspective, when private equities look at investments in the chemicals sector. Coming to new products and technologies, as DuPont, we have kind of walked the talk. We've done those kind of efficiency improvements by introducing technology to really recirculate the exhaust. So the waste hot exhaust that was being lost has been reintroduced and making that process more efficient. There are also a lot of technologies in the recovery and recycling of industrial waste. We are supporting a company that really recycles high value, very rare earths and from spent catalysts, etc. So there is a lot of new technologies being developed in the circular economy to look at how can waste be valorized, how can resources which are not currently utilized, be upcycled, etc. as well. And of course, on plastic recycling and upcycling, we already heard from SABIC. There are also a couple of other speakers who are really, experts on that. And there's a lot of innovation happening in that space. And I heard this in many, many conversations, partnerships, absolutely central to really identifying these opportunities because, the whole point of the circular economy is that, it is linked from one to the other. It is not a standalone single linear system. And definitely, there are a lot of, opportunities for partnerships around the table across the value chain. And just two that I present, coming also, from the history of DuPont and Chemours. One is, with, about the repellent finish for ski wear that was co-created in a way to make a more sustainable and much more durable ski brand or ski wear. And this was something that was around the circular economy because it started off with that discussion on having something that can be longer lasting, which is coming from renewable plant sources, etc. And so it's easier to recycle. So building on all these very central concepts. And chemical leasing, I think, is also very, very commonplace now. It has been growing in popularity, and there are a lot of case studies which show how moving from this volume orientation to a more performance orientation, business model of, for example, solvents, having a closed loop over there can really improve efficiencies, can reduce costs, and really enhance the entire operational efficiency. And of course, it's not at the cost of the environment either. So it's really something that is a very win-win solution in many ways. And then just a couple of last thoughts. Okay. On why it makes really business sense, because there is, of course, the revenue aspect, from the new services, the new products, and new business models. Of course, the costs and risks, as I mentioned, from the operational excellence and risk perspective, are also mitigated looking at, circular economy opportunities. And there is the brand equity. I think that is really something that more and more companies are very much aware of. There is a lot more demand from consumers for companies to really show their credentials on various topics on ESG, whether it is on resource use, whether it's on disclosures, whether it's on their carbon footprint. So yeah, definitely all these are drivers which there is opportunities for the circular economy to support. And just one last slide, which also I think answers some of the questions, at least one that was I saw in the chat, is how do you really engage on this topic? How do you actually start on looking at circular economy strategies, and how do you implement it? And what we've seen is really it starts at the top. that is really the foundation. When you have that board and senior leadership involvement, it really then can build on to engage other stakeholders. And then, having that strategy, moving into the organizational aspect, really setting those targets, getting the capability, of a team, getting the whole organization involved, developing those detailed plans, and then implementing it, and really having that operational framework to have the reporting mechanisms, to have all the tools and skills to really be able to make that successful. And this is something that we've done a lot of work on in implementing health and safety in the organization, really achieving the outcomes. So it's very, very outcome based in that sense, and really having that engagement right through from the strategy to the operation, and then continuing it over time. So yeah, there are, as it was mentioned, starting with the materiality matrix, understanding the level of maturity, the opportunities to assess where the data is, how do you really start to collect some of the indicators, the data for the indicators, which then can inform various strategies to understand what are the opportunities, and then develop those business plans, prepare the business models, etc. So I think it's something that is a very, very exciting space. There are a lot of opportunities. There are barriers. I wouldn't say there are only opportunities. It's true as everywhere else, but definitely it is something that the chemical industry has really a lot of I think it has a very important role to play, and there is really a strong push towards circularity from many directions. So it will become much more relevant, even if it is not already. I just want to wrap up over there. Thank you again, and happy to take any questions if there are. Thanks, Shivani. Back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Deepali. It was great and a very insightful talk about giving us an idea about the ESG also, and how to implement a circular economy, some of the opportunities that companies could look into. So some of the points that I also came across was, one is like the resource scarcity, legislation issues, pollution, and say waste accumulation. Definitely major issues in the chemical industry. And again, you mentioned energy transition and sustainability for the chemical industry. Now, these are definitely points that the industry will look into, And some of the models that you mentioned were very interesting. Some new customers and investors, where people could work together, then new products and technologies, new partnerships, and say business models. Definitely looking at it as a whole, say on an individual level, organizations can look into it, and maybe say as an industry as a whole, we could get together and create an ecosystem, where we could move forward towards a circular economy, say standard or a legislation. How that works. We'll have to look into it in the future. Great. Thank you. And we'll move on to the Q&A. And if anyone has questions, you can put it on the chat also, and we would be interested in putting it across to this.